Good afternoon. I'm Meg Whalen. I'm the Director of Communications and External Relations for the College of Arts and Architecture. And today we are here with David Walters, who is a professor in the School of Architecture and the director of the Master of Urban Design program. And David will be retiring from the university at the end of the semester, and tomorrow evening will give a valedictory lecture at the UNC Charlotte Center City building, Small Urban Projects, Big Urban Changes. And so we invited David to join us on the live wire this afternoon to talk some about his career, about the urban design program that we have here at the university, and about really some of the amazing projects that our students in the urban design program have been doing in our community. Since you founded pretty much and directed the Master of Urban Design program, let's start by talking a little bit about what that degree is about and who the students are that come there and what they do, what they learn, and what they do in that program.
Sure, it's always something that when we look through the applications every year, quite a few students say, I want to come on your urban planning program. We don't go out of our way to correct them because in some ways it's a distinction without a difference, but it is a very important difference. I mean, urban, it's about cities, it's about human settlement at any scale, really. And then we get into design and planning. There's a lot of overlap, and which is why we don't go out of our way to correct folks, but we do gently say, you mean urban design. Because urban designers work in three dimensions. We are largely architects and landscape architects. There are other disciplines, very valuable disciplines, who become urban designers, planners, environmental engineers, sustainability experts. But essentially our job is to create the three-dimensional infrastructure of towns and cities, the streets, the squares, the transit organization, so things are safe, functional, and hopefully beautiful. And once you do the design, then you've got to go into policy. You've got to go into planning to create the implementation tools, the regulations that will guide development over 20, 30 years. So it's a very fuzzy boundary. Urban planners do all the policy, but traditionally urban planning programs do not do much about design. They're much more policy-driven, administrative, public participation, all very important stuff. We do that too, but we design. And so that's why urban design is such a crucial area, because we blend architecture and planning into a three-dimensional discipline.
Yeah, and in fact, I guess we do have an urban planning master's at the university too, do we not?
Well, there's in the geography department, there's a master's. We refer to it as the community planning program.
Okay.
Its full title is Master of Arts in Geography / Community Planning.
All right.
And so that's a great program. It's a sort of sister brother program to us.
Right. I know we've had students who've done both kind
Yes.
of simultaneously.
Because in the planning program, those students do go more into policy, more into public administration. Mm-hmm. Educating students into what they need to know to be planners in a city government, for example. Our urban design program doesn't go there. Our policy education has to do with the implementation of design in relation to working with the public, working with elected officials. So if you put those two together, and as you said, some of our very best students have combined not only those two programs, but also architecture as well, ending up with 3 degrees, which is extremely useful, both for the environment, but also personally in the job market.
Right. I understand that our urban design program has an international component to it that makes it unique in some respects. The students do a summer in China.
Yes, for the last 3 years, we've been working in the summer in China. That location will shift to Brazil in the fairly near future for another 3-year cycle. The idea was that, well, it was a very clear idea, which was implanted directly at the beginning of the planning process, which began in 2004, 2005, was that global education would be a major part of it. It didn't become clear how to do that until, and I got to give credit where it's due here, to the School of Architecture director, Chris Jarrett, who, when he arrived, brought with him a very specific vision about how to do that. And so we condensed the 3-semester program into a 12-month time frame, with the summer being half of it being spent working abroad, because global practice is so important. And so that's become one of the defining elements of the program.
I actually have a few pictures from either last summer or the summer before of some of our students with their Chinese counterparts, I guess. Our students study with the Chinese students, and we see them here in classrooms. I guess this is in Tongji University?
Yes, UNC Charlotte has a very, very good and useful and wonderful relationship with Tongji University in Shanghai. And we actually have a formal exchange program with them. We welcome, this coming fall, we'll be welcoming 2 master's students from Tongji onto our urban design program, so they will graduate 12 months later with a Master of Urban Design degree. And we have American architecture students who go in reverse, and they go into the Tongji architecture program, and they get a Masters of Architecture from Tongji to go with their Masters of Architecture from UNC Charlotte. So it's a wonderful opportunity because the Chinese faculty and students are very keen to study in America, and several of our students are very keen to study abroad. It's one of the things that we push, that it is a global world, and while some students do quite reasonably worry about the expense, because when you travel, that's money. But I think we were at a global architecture education forum that, again, Chris Jarrett organized about a year ago, and one of the global firms who has an office here in Charlotte said to the audience of architecture students, if you come work for us, probably within 3 years you'll be working abroad. That's just what they expect of their employees, because most, in some cases nearly all, the real high profile work from the top American firms is being done in Asia, in China, Korea, and that fast developing part of the globe. And so that is where huge opportunities exist for our students, and so we're pleased to be a part of that.
I love this picture here because it looks so space age, doesn't it?
Yes.
It looks like
Yes.
something out of, I don't know, Star Trek. And it
Yes,
shows you kind of Shanghai, I guess,
Yes.
and how it's...
Yes, you're almost on the bridge of the Enterprise there, aren't you? Looking out on an alien world. But yes, so in Shanghai and other Chinese cities have immense educational value for our students, both in terms of opening their eyes to a global scale and, in fact, an urban design scale, which is beyond almost anything happening in America.
Yeah.
We traditionally think, because of America's leadership in so many areas for a couple of generations, they sort of took over from the British, by the way, that we're the biggest and best at everything. And we may be the best at many, many things, but we're not the biggest anymore. Yeah. And so it's really important for our students to get a global perspective. They can also see that China is making a disappointing number of mistakes, actually copying the West's mistakes without filtering out those errors, which is alarming, because they're compounding those errors because they're building at such a more high-paced and larger scale. So if they do something wrong with lots of soulless high-rises, that's tens of thousands of people's lives that are being affected.
I want to also talk a little bit about some of the, let me pull up one of the other, some of the community work that our students are doing right here in the Charlotte region with you under your guidance. And there's a big project, I guess it's funded through Housing and Urban Development federally.
There's a federal grant from the HUD, Housing and Urban Development Agency, for $4.9 million. Casually people say $5 million, that was awarded to a local consortium with the slightly awkward title of COG, Centralina Council of Governments. And there's also the South Carolina Catawba Regional Council of Governments. So there's a bunch of acronyms in there. So if the listeners hear me say COG, I don't mean a machine part, I mean this Council of Governments. And they're the coordinating agency for a 2-state, 14-county region. And the Charlotte region, thus defined, is the largest region in America without a clear regional growth strategy to meet the challenges of the future decades. Our population is going to increase by well over 1.5 million people, but by middle of the century. That's hundreds and hundreds of thousands more jobs, more people, more homes, more workplaces, more everything. And while some of this growth may happen in little increments that you don't really notice, others will come in big chunks. And we don't want to get it wrong. Right. And so our urban design program and my colleague, Dr. Jose Gamez, and I have been working with our research assistants from the urban design program, working with COG to develop all the documentation for this long 3-year project. It's highly technical. Some of it is very sort of planner-centric, jargon-driven, but it's essential information for the computer programming that goes on in the process of what's called scenario planning, looking ahead to the future, 30, 40 years, and saying, what if? And not just drawing a picture, but running the data, what we call indicators for, if we do it this way, we'll lose this amount of open space. We'll be traveling more miles in our cars. Our pollution index will go up this much. We'll have this amount of housing need, et cetera, et cetera. So this massive exercise, which involves dozens of people, we're a piece of it. Luckily, we're positioned at the core of it, so we get to be involved in a lot of things. That the relationship between all this technical data and the citizens in the region, that's part of the interface that we're managing, because there's massive thousands and thousands of folks all across the 14 counties have given their time to participate in this effort. And we're nearing the end in terms of trying to draw all this together to take the alternative scenarios back out to the elected officials and to folks throughout the region.
And people can see on the screen the counties that we're talking about. So this is the general region that you've been working in, and there's York, so all of the 14 county area.
Yes.
And so what has happened, my understanding is that communities have, in each of these counties, people have actually come together and talked about how they would like to see their county grow. And you've been there. There's a picture.
Yes, there's our 14 county region.
Of the region, and there's Mecklenburg kind of in the middle of that. And so there has been guided conversation through these workshops to think about how each county should approach it, and getting this input from the...
That's a good picture if we stop there,
Yeah.
because that indicates there's a group of citizens working at a public meeting on a map of their county, and they are playing what's called the chip game, where they have a pack of development chips, so many new jobs, new housing, so many new shopping centres, or whatever it is, which is based on very accurate projections from the US Census data about actually how many people in the next several decades will be in that county. And so from all over each of the 14 counties, within each county, several, sometimes dozens of community meetings where people have discussed this. And that stage that you see illustrated up there is where folks are beginning to confront some of the difficult decisions. Because when you play the chip game, and there's a big room full of, say, 10, 12 tables with half a dozen folks around each, and they're playing this game saying, well, we'll put housing here and some jobs here, and you've got to use up all the chips. Mm-hmm. And so what usually happens is about 45 minutes to an hour, and people take all the easy decisions, this, that, and the other, and then they look and they've got this pile of chips left. And the facilitator says, okay, you've got 10 minutes to play all the chips, because the US census information is a pretty accurate prediction. I mean, there are way more than 1 million people headed our way, to join us in our region. And we want not only to save what we've got, some wonderful things about our region, but also we are failing to meet the challenge of the future in terms of dealing with climate change. We are way, way off any of the targets set by the climate scientists, the 98% of scientists who agree about climate change. There's a very specific cutoff point about the amount of pollution in our atmosphere. And the way we're going now, there's no way we are going to meet that if we keep business as usual. And so we are literally driving our grandchildren's futures into the ground. It's a sobering message, and it's one we confront our students with, because we're educating them to be agents of change. Because I'm going to say in my lecture tomorrow, the subtitle is How to Save America One Community at a Time. And then I say, save America? Does America need to be saved? Yes, from itself, from ourselves. Because the way we live, the way we commute, the way we become very comfortable with living for tens of millions, hundreds of millions of Americans, is in the long term unsustainable. And that's a terribly difficult issue to confront. And I totally get why people are in denial about it. It's like if you've got a big health problem, you sort of pretend it's not there, right, until you have to deal with it. Well, we will have to deal with it. And so the question is, are we going to change enough, quickly enough, or are we going to wait until we're in the emergency room? I don't know, but our students are totally charged up about being agents of change to offer American communities a way forward that begins to deal with these very problematic issues of future sustainability. And that's really what this huge exercise is about, to try and get our region on track.
And are you finding, as you talk to people and as you gather this information and these reports, that people are unified in their hope to shape their communities in ways that will
in small
be
ways,
beneficial?
yes. I mean, we meet so many amazingly wonderful people doing this that it gives you hope, right? I mean, you got to have hope, or else you don't get up in the morning. You just pack it in and go play golf until the world ends. So you get up in the morning and you work with folks who are tremendously focused on their own communities, and that's the great strength. The weakness is that when you put communities together and ask them to collaborate, somebody in the room starts talking about socialism. That collaboration, my part of the world, that little island off the coast of Europe somewhere, we had to work together to rebuild our nation after World War II. The Dutch, the Germans, the French had to build their nation after World War II. The Dutch have been fighting the ocean for centuries, so you can't keep the ocean at bay one by one by one. You've got to do it communally. So Europe has learned through adversity to become more communally oriented and to come to shared solutions. For us in America, that's the hardest point, because if you stay with individual communities, people totally get with the program for themselves. When you ask them to become part of a larger regional vision and share, that if something goes here and you don't get it but you get something else, it makes more sense in terms of future patterns, then the discords open up. And my heart tends to sink the moment someone from the back of the room yells out, "That's socialism." Because it isn't, it's collaboration. It's helping your neighbor. And that's a huge impediment to how America can move forward. The other famous Winston Churchill saying, you can count on America always to do the right thing after it's tried every other possible alternative. Right. And of course, having an American mother, he could say that and get away with it. But I have a feeling this is going to be true, that we'll wait until the last possible moment, and then all the fabled American ingenuity and hard work, and that'll race into gear.
Yeah.
And who knows whether it's going to be enough.
Here's on the screen some of the statistics you were just talking about, the huge jump
yes.
in population projected for 2050, the number of jobs, and then the way things will be developed.
And this is Americans yet to be born. It's not foreigners. This is the other thing. Oh, well, if we keep the foreigners out, then we won't have a problem. No, this is Americans. This is Americans living longer. This is Americans being born. These are people becoming American citizens for any number of wonderful reasons. One of the reasons America led the world for so long was that it welcomed bright people from anywhere in the world. And now we're a little more focused on keeping people out, and I know the world is a very complicated and scary place. But the people we're dealing with are future Americans. They have every right to live in their own country and to find decent work and to have decent housing, to build new communities, to contribute to existing ones. And so this has been one of the learning issues, that this isn't just a bunch of immigrants. These are the future Americans from our own families, future generations of our own families. And the numbers, you can look at it as a problem of all these people, or you can say, wow, we're going to have that many more brains, that many more minds, that many more creative contributing people to move America forward. And those are two different worldviews, and we'll see which one wins.
Well, let's hope it's a positive one.
Well, I believe it. One of the reasons I'm, quote, retiring from the university is to go back to practice, because it's become clear to me that I can be more useful in the last 5-10 years of my professional life working with individual communities to move their community forward to meet the challenges and to become models, beacons of hope for other communities. So, and as I said, I've been a part of educating many, many, many students over the years, and they're out there working, they're out there doing this stuff. And I've got tremendously talented colleagues who will, keep doing. Just because I'm leaving doesn't mean we stop this. There's wonderful people in the department. And I'm just going to refocus on working with communities to help them solve their own particular issues and nudge them towards collaborating with people who, the other side of the county line, the other side of the town boundary, because air pollution, water pollution, whatever, doesn't stop at county lines. That's a cliche, it's perfectly true. And we've got to think beyond our own self-interest into our community's interest.
One community I know that you've worked on, because you've been a part of the Lawrence group and still are.
Mm-hmm.
And so one community that you most recently were involved in is Somerville in South Carolina. And we have on the screen some of the documents from that process.
There we are on a site visit.
And there you are,
boat,
and
yes.
I can see you in here in the room, and then on the boat with some of our alumni, actually.
Yes,
who
some
now
of our
work
talented
there.
alumni.
Our talented alumni who do go out, as you said, and are doing the work. And so are just some of the, I guess, studies that you did with residents in that town.
I mean, before we go on charrette is the fancy French word for a big week-long workshop. Before we do that, and we had a 17-person team of architects, urban designers, planners, market analysts, etc., working in and for Somerville. Some members of that team had spent 6 months working with elected officials, business leaders, property owners, citizen groups, neighborhood activists, to find out everything we could about that community. What the challenges are, which are both generic, because every community's got similar challenges, but also very specific. Mm-hmm. And Somerville, actually, like many places in the Carolinas, has a wonderful history, tied up often between the War of Independence, mm-hmm. between Britain and America, and the back and forth, and the traces of that history are alive and well in Somerville as a great historical treasure. And trying to capitalize on history, identity of the community, to provide that identity, which is different from North Charleston, which is different from other communities. It's Somerville. This is what we do with every community. And I'm talking about practice now, but we bring practice right into the classroom, so that my colleagues in the Lawrence group come and work with the students directly on their boards and in seminars. And whenever possible, our students go out on charrette, to understand the community dynamics. Because if there's one thing we've learned over the span of my career, is that modernism, the sort of high modernism of the decades after the Second World War, was really all about a bold new vision of the future. And we hope that the people will catch up, right? The number of times as a student I heard people complain, but the public just don't understand us. And we hid behind that belief that we knew something that the public didn't. And what we've learned is that it wasn't meant to be arrogant, but actually it was arrogant. And while we've got specialist expertise, we're educated, we go through a lot of education to learn stuff, but then we put that at the service of communities and we listen. And so by the time we go on charrette, and this is that slide says, that's what Somerville, those are the words that we heard most.
Right, that people want to see in their community.
What they feel identifies their town. So not just feelings, but also data about homelessness, about income levels, about unemployment, because it's both visionary yet data driven. And that combination is becoming normal in practice, and we've made a recent hire in our urban design program, Dr. Ming Chung Lee, who is a tremendous asset to our school, because he brings the latest techniques and skills in this discipline of scenario planning, where we create future visions and can test them against data. So it's not just we think this, we think that. Here's an indicator that shows if you do this, that's going to be the result. And that's going to be an increasing part of our education in the urban design program. Practice is going that way. Our education is hopefully going to lead there, so that we're not going to lose the vision. We're not going to lose the capacity to see and imagine the future. But it's not going to be just out of our heads. It's in conjunction with the community, and it's in relation to data.
We just have 1 second left, but I wanted to show people kind of the fun side of
this is the fun
data-based
side.
and community-based projections that you can take a picture of the way things are now in a place like Somerville in a little area, and then you can project onto that what it could be based on what the residents there are looking for and what the information points to.
That particular pair of illustrations was seized on by the local TV and the newspaper because that before and after is an attractive way of doing it. That photo montage was actually created by one of our alumni who now works for the Lawrence Group, Keely Moore, very talented young woman. And the idea is that, as we design things in plan, to work out what needs to be where. That was a situation where they had a parking deck in the right place, but nobody used it because it was a bit dark and scary and this, that, and the other. And so we were able to transform the area around it in very simple ways, redirecting some traffic, changing the floorscape, the patterns and paving and colors, doing more planting, redefining what the public space is like, to make it a really attractive place, give opportunities for local businesses to have more business, make more money. I mean, ultimately, all of this stuff has to make money for somebody, has to make money for the city in terms of a robust tax base to keep providing schools, libraries, parks, all the stuff that we want. It's got to provide opportunities for individual property owners and businesses to be profitable. And it's complicated, and our students have a heck of a professional life in front of them, because I can't think of any more challenging and wonderful thing to do than to help a community realize its dreams.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to hearing more about how these kinds of small urban projects can have big urban changes on a global scale and even on a particular neighborhood scale.
Yeah.
And so I encourage people viewing to come to Center City tomorrow at 6 for the lecture. There'll be a reception afterwards. And thank you so much for joining me on the Live Wire, and tune in next week.
Thank you, Meg.